Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our workshop, Building Community Capacity Around Veterans. This workshop has been brought together by the USDA Office of Partnership and Public Engagement, as well as the Regional Rural Development Centers. And my name is Bridget Scott. I am Assistant Research Professor at Virginia Tech and also the Director of Program Development and Evaluation for the Military Families Learning Network. I'm here today with several colleagues who are going to be presenting over the next few days. Sarah and Crystal, would you like to briefly introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi, good morning. I'm Sarah Boffman. I'm an Associate Research Professor at Virginia Tech also. I work closely with Bridget on the Military Families Learning Network, among other projects, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today.
Hi, good morning. I'm Crystal Tyler Mackey. I'm a specialist in community viability with Virginia Cooperative Extension at Virginia Tech and in the Department of Agricultural Community and Leadership Education. I do a lot of work on various different projects partnering with communities to address issues of opportunity or concern, and I'm very happy to be here today as well.
Thanks, Sarah and Crystal, and we're also really pleased to be joined by Carol Watuski and Bill Ashton. Carol is the USDA Rural Development, is at the USDA Rural Development Innovation Center, and Bill Ashton is from the Office of Partnership and Public Engagement and is the Acting Director of Strategic Initiatives. And Carol and Bill have been working with us to develop this workshop. They're going to be here to engage with you in the chat and also to take questions throughout the next couple of weeks. So we encourage you to engage with us and ask as many questions as you like. We're looking forward to getting to know all of you. Give you a brief overview of our workshop goals for the next few weeks. We want to help support community organizing and planning with the veteran population in mind. We'd love to help increase capacity of community serving organizations and of course to leverage USDA and partner programs and resources. And we also want to support capacity building tools around veteran specific topics that you all can implement in your work. A workshop overview, I believe you've received an email with an agenda and connection information, but we have 3 sessions that we've developed for you. With session 1 starting today, we have 2 sessions of office hours. These are totally optional, but they're there for you to join us if you'd like, if you have questions on homework assignments, just want to do a little Q&A or network and just talk through some of the work you're doing. And the homework assignments I mentioned are not meant to be drudge work. It's just to help us sort of make the most of our time together here in Zoom. So we have several videos that we've put together for you to view on your own time and complete a couple of worksheets so you can get thinking on some of these community capacity building tools we're going to be talking about. So when we're together, we're able to maximize our conversation and our engagement. So today is our first session, which is our veterans in our communities, and we are going to be talking in general about getting to know veterans at the local level. Please feel free to engage with us in the chat. Because of the screen sharing we're doing, I actually can't personally see the chat right now, but my colleagues are going to let me know if I need to pause and address any questions you have. Please ask questions, make comments, say hello to one another. We're going to be together for a few weeks, and I think as we get to know one another, we're going to be learning a lot from each other. So today we're going to be talking about who are veterans, and we're going to be going over some veteran cultural competency pieces. We're going to talk about some community assets, which if you had a chance to view the video ahead of time, that will be familiar to you. We're going to have a data section on identifying veterans in your community, and then we're going to go over homework for session 2. Today is a lot of content, but after today, there's going to be a lot more talking and engaging. So I ask for your patience as we go through some of this key material that I think will be helpful for you all in your work. So briefly, our learning objectives, we're going to learn about veteran population and workplace trends. We're going to gain awareness of interpersonal and organizational veteran cultural competencies. We're going to use publicly available data sources to help you learn how to identify the veterans in your community. And of course, we're going to be talking about those community assets and identifying the people and organizations and agencies that are available in your communities and to help make your community veteran friendly. So we'll get started by talking about who are our veterans. This data is from a veteran population study done in 2018. And there are currently over 20 million veterans in the United States. They are predominantly white and male, and they make up about 8% of the US population. The total veteran population is predicted to decline to 13.6 million in 2037. And notably in that trend, the number of female and minority veterans are actually going to increase while the number of white male veterans are going to decrease. Currently, the Gulf War era veterans now account for the largest veteran cohort in the United States, and 50% of the veterans live in the top 10 most populous states in this country. When we're thinking about veterans in our communities and in our workforce, you can see that almost half of the US veterans are between the ages of 18 and 64, which puts them in that workforce eligibility range. And here you can see the percent of US veterans by era of their earliest service. So in 2016, in the gray bars, you can see that the Vietnam and Gulf War era vets were about the same. And this study was done in 2016 by Pew Research. The following year that the Gulf War cohort exceeded the Vietnam veteran era cohort. So just a little bit of a landscape view there. As far as veterans in the workforce, the US Chamber of Commerce Foundation did a study, and they interviewed over 400 HR professionals, I believe, and 1,000 veterans to get this information. And what they found was that there's an estimated 8.7 million veterans in the labor force, and that 32% of those veterans are working in public service or charitable organizations, which tells you a lot about the sort of work that veterans are drawn to. The overall veteran unemployment rate was cut in half from about 8% in 2011 to 4.3% in 2016. This was the most current data I could find, but presumably that might look a little different these days. Veterans are ranked as a top 3 recruiting target for companies, and it's because they are viewed as having really positive employee attributes. So that's something to keep in mind. Also something to keep in mind is that in the workforce, there is absolutely a military-civilian divide, and in fact, over half of the HR professionals that were interviewed in this study said that they were unfamiliar with military rank and structure. And they also reported that many of the organizations they represented had a lack of formal training to help non-veteran employees relate to veterans. I think that's notable, and I think that there is a trend in workplaces to start, encouraging workshops and diversity training. And actually here at Virginia Tech, we do offer a veteran cultural competency workshop, which is a full day. But so I hope that that's a trend that we're seeing more and more often in more and more organizations to help bridge that divide. Another thing that's notable, these next 2 points to think about as in a few more slides when we're talking about the Sea of Goodwill, is that veterans who plan for their transition out of service early fare better in their job searches, and that female veterans are reporting a tougher time finding their first post-military jobs, as well as being financially worse off after leaving service. So speaking of veteran cultural competency, this is just high-level overview. There's so much to dig into here, but in the interest of time, we're just going to talk about a few things. The Psych Armor Institute is a wonderful resource if you're familiar with it. If not, We have links to some of their content in a downloadable resource guide for you. But they did a study and compiled a resulting video that is 15 things veterans want you to know. It's a great video, super informative and really short. I would encourage you to look at it. And so I just pulled out a couple of the 15 things that veterans reported that they really just want you all to know. One of them being, I'll just highlight a few, that they're not all soldiers. You know, soldiers were in the Army, so when you're talking to a veteran, make sure you say, what branch did you serve in? I think the family piece is really important to keep in mind, is that military families serve with their service members. And so when you're working with veterans, when you're working with service members, their families are a part of that work, and you need to keep that in mind. And another thing is that our veterans are saying in this study that it's hard to ask for help. And when you think about it, you know, service members are part of an others-focused culture. And so when the time comes for them to ask for help, it's new and different. And part of that asking for help requires trust and vulnerability. So as you begin to think about working with veterans and how to connect with veterans, please keep that in mind. When you're talking with veterans, here are just a couple of great questions to ask. You know, not only did you serve, but how about what inspired you to join, and what branch did you serve in? What was most rewarding? Again, part of this video, and it would be a great way to spend your time, just to kind of get yourself familiar with some of these things. Another thing I wanted to highlight is, I think many folks are aware, a lot of times when you find out you're talking to a service member or veteran, an automatic response is to say thank you for your service. And it's genuine, but from a veteran's perspective, that might start to feel a little bit old or canned after a while, or inauthentic. And there's a conversation, you know, about, you know, some veterans don't mind it and some do. So I was reading a blog called War on the Rocks, and it's referenced there. Again, we'll put it in that resource guide of just some different options. Rather than just saying the same old thank you for your service, you can say thanks for putting the rest of your life on hold. You can acknowledge what a commitment that was. You could say thanks for the sacrifices you made, being away from your family, by acknowledging, you know, what that means to be away from your family. And finally, you could say something like thanks for stepping up and choosing to serve when so many others didn't, and just acknowledge that, you know, their service and their commitment is very special. Some of you may have heard of the Sea of Goodwill. And the Sea of Goodwill is a phrase used for just the incredible fire hose of support that's available to veterans and service members. And these are, you know, nonprofits, government organizations, churches, just the population in general, universities, schools, organizations like yours, nonprofits. All of these organizations coming together are part of the Sea of Goodwill. And they are providing really important reintegration services. And it's commonly accepted that these three key services are education and employment and access to quality health care. So while it's wonderful that we have so much support out there for veterans, you can imagine that it also can be extremely difficult to navigate for the veterans. So the point I wanted to make is that you are a part of the Sea of Goodwill, just by nature of being here, the work you're doing, the work you're hoping to do. This puts you squarely in this wonderful group of programs and organizations. But I want to spend a minute to talk about how you can be a very meaningful contributor as a part of the Sea of Goodwill. So part of it is awareness and identification of the local programs. So not just what you're doing, but understanding, you know, taking a look at your community and your region and saying, well, what are those church groups doing, or what are the schools doing? So being able to see, you know, in general, what your community is offering. And the more you as an individual can identify and understand what's going on locally, the better you can help support veterans as you're interacting one-on-one. And as you're doing that identification, think about any gaps in these resources. And again, think of the three main components of the reintegration services that are so important. So education and employment and healthcare. So you might understand that in your community, you've got, great employment services and options, but maybe there are barriers to healthcare access. So as much as you can understand what's available, understand what the gaps in the resources are. And as you're doing that, you want to get connected to and build partnerships with all of these organizations and groups. And that's what we're really here for in this workshop, is to understand, what is available, build partnerships with other community organizations doing that work, and really making it so that all of that work that you're all doing together becomes more than just the individual work. And you want to stay connected. So you don't want to just know what's going on now, but what did you do a year ago or 2 years ago? How did that go? What's coming up in 2 years? What programs are sunsetting? What challenges did you have? So the more you can understand the holistic, environment locally for what's offered for veterans, the better you're going to be able to support your veterans in your community. So part of that is community assets. And again, this is hopefully a video you were able to view. I'm going to turn it over to Crystal now to talk about what some of those assets are in your community and how you can start leveraging them.
Great, thank you, Bridget. So by waving at me, wave your hand at me if you were able to view the video, the pre-video. Yep, great. Oh, I love people who do their homework. Gold stars, everybody. I know that not all of us would have had an opportunity to do that. So by way of just a quick overview, we're going to talk about what some of those assets are, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time in breakout rooms, having an opportunity for you to share in smaller groups with one another some examples of those assets for your community. And that should hopefully spur on some other ideas and good thoughts in those small breakout rooms. So very quickly, we'll just highlight what those capitals are. These come from the Community Capitals Framework. And if you think about these, put on the lens of, what are some resources that would be specific to the work that we're talking about here with veterans. So financial capital or assets, thinking about the resources that are available to be invested in local projects or initiatives. Political capital is referring to those the opportunities that people have to influence rules, regulations, and policies by having access to the decision makers, such as opportunities to participate in efforts where citizens have a voice, those type of things. Social capital, social assets refer to the connections among the people and organizations that just help make things happen in the community, that helps to foster trust and cooperation amongst individuals and amongst groups and organizations. Built capital, that's your facilities, your infrastructure, the things that were built to support the community, related services that are needed in the community. Human capital, that's the skills and abilities that people have that allow them to earn a living, contribute positively to their community, strengthen the community. Natural capital is the environmental and natural resources that are available in communities. And then there's cultural capital, a cultural asset. So those are the values, the norms, the traditions of a particular place or community. There are things like books and art and other pieces that have historical or cultural significance to a community. So I'm going to put those in the chat and share out in the chat. And we're going to spend some time in breakout rooms. So you do not have a pre-assigned facilitator. So when you get into your breakout room, if one of you would be so kind as to jot down, chat box would be great if you're comfortable with that. If not, you can write it somewhere else. Jot down some of the examples that are shared in your room. And when we come back, we'll share out some of those examples in the main room. So we're gonna ask, I'm gonna ask Catherine and Rachel if they will get us set up in breakout rooms, and what will happen is they will send us to breakout rooms if you haven't participated in one before. They will send us to breakout rooms. They will push a button and you will appear in a smaller room, smaller than the 31 participants that are here. And that will be your small group. So imagine if you were in a physical facility, you'd be sent to that round table to have a small group discussion, but we're virtual, so we'll do that here. So if one of you, when you get there, would be so kind as to take the notes, maybe get the conversation going, and just jot down an example or two from each of the types of capital. And before you do that, just introduce yourself, or when you're sharing your notes, say who you are, where you're from, and then get to the capital. So we use this as an opportunity to network as well. All right, so at this point, and we'll send you a note. When the note comes, you'll see a note pop up that says, you know, how many minutes or seconds you have left, and they will push a button and you'll come back into the main room with all of us.
So
All
about
right.
how much about how much time were you?
About 10.
Okay. All right, here we go.
10 minutes. So how was that, everyone? Good, I hope?
Yeah, it was
Thumbs
very
up?
interesting.
Thumbs
Very
up?
interesting.
Good. All right, so if you met someone in that breakout room that you had not met before, give me a thumbs up. Good. Awesome. Great. All right, so we'll just share out some examples. If you'll pick one or two of the capitals to share out some examples from, that would be great. So we'll sort of just let this go as you're ready to share. So is there a room that would like to share? Start sharing?
This is Carol. I believe, in room 2, and I
All right.
took notes for the group. And I'll just hit a couple. One is financial. There's many different, like guaranteed or working with your local banks that have different programs, veteran-supported programs. And then Donna Kate also mentioned state programs, state-funded programs around veteran agriculture and getting veterans started in agriculture. And then Laura, to flip to the other one, we went to human, and it was education services and connecting students with community partners, and so they could build on that.
Great. Thank you, Carol, in room 2. So is there another room that would share some additional assets or resources?
This is Circe. In my group, I don't know which group we were in, maybe group 1. We talked about several organizations that help. So I guess that's human capital. America Serves is a group that helps veterans. And it handles all sorts of things. It was started by the Obama administration. There's supposed to be one in each state, and it works across different disciplines and different dimensions. The National Veterans Intermediary, another national group, it's part of the Bob Woodruff Foundation. If you are working with veterans, helping veterans, it's a very good organization to become involved with because they give helping organizations financial support, educational support. And then there's also a group called Team Rubicon, which is a group that goes out made up of veterans and their families to help communities in crisis through floods and natural disasters. And there were more. We talked about other groups, but I didn't get all the names.
Great.
There's tons of people out there wanting to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Circe. And so there's also a worksheet that you'll find that's on the website. So there's a worksheet for you to be able to, really think through for your community what the different types of capitals and assets are that are available. And it will be helpful to revisit that as you share out other ideas and opportunities. Is there one more room that would like to share some additional resources or assets?
My name's Amber, and I think I was in group 5. But our group, we talked about like urban farming, and then we also talked about farmers to families, those boxes that USDA gave out. We actually got our first set of orders yesterday, so we were able to distribute 300 boxes to everybody, so that was nice.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So, and just sort of closing out, again, if you haven't had a chance to view the video, it's pretty short. It covers these, but one of the things that we know is that the strongest, most resilient communities are the ones that have focused on building up the resources and assets in all of these 7 domains. So as you end the session today, and we'll revisit this, really be thinking about, think outside of the box as well as to what the resources and assets are in your community, because you may not have connected a dot yet to your project, initiative, or interest, but there may be one that's there. You just haven't quite seen it yet. So thank you. For the others who haven't had an opportunity to share, or even if you did, it would be fantastic if you'd be willing to drop some of those thoughts or ideas in the chat box so that we can all take advantage of those. So having said that, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the connections in the breakout rooms, thinking about assets and examples, and hopefully they spur on some other thoughts for you. We'll transition from this piece around assets and resources into the community to start thinking about how you identify veterans in your community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. Thank you, everybody. We had great discussion in our group. We got to some assets, but really we did a lot of nice networking and talking about student veterans. So that was really cool. So we're gonna transition now, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about just a brief introduction, and based on what I saw of folks as you were introducing yourselves, some of you might already be familiar with a lot of the data that is out there around veterans. So as you begin to think about what your organization, whether it's a university or a nonprofit or a government organization, about working with veterans, Bridget gave us some nice high-level information about veterans. There's also a lot of information you can figure out about your specific community, whether it's on a state level, regional level, county level. There's a wealth of open source data available on veterans. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here and talk about some of that data, where you can find it, a little bit about quality and reliable data, and how you can use that data. We'll talk about it before we finish up here. One of your homework assignments is to really go play in the data. Some people love to do that, others not so much, but we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So data comes in a lot of forms, and it comes from lots of sources. So today I'm going to talk primarily about quantitative data or numerical data. But as you begin, especially if you're really drilling down into a smaller community level, whether it's a county or I guess we're in the Northeast, so we don't have parishes, but or towns or townships, you want to really explore your data and don't discount the value of narrative or qualitative data. There are probably a lot of really good stories of veteran experiences and their lived experiences, whether, as they transition into a civilian world or into the workforce outside of the military. So even though I'm going to be talking primarily about quantitative data, I just wanted to make sure and share that there's a lot of value in qualitative data as well. I'm going to talk a little bit also about how do you know if it's good data? So, it's not from Facebook or Twitter or Wikipedia. it's, if you want to find good data, you need to go to good data sources. So you always want to look for sources from the government or accredited educational institutions. So it's a big university that you're familiar with. Like I'm going to talk some today about some data out of Syracuse. That's going to be a good, reliable source of data. So other questions you can ask yourself when you look at data is, does it make sense? Does it resonate with what you know about your community, or is it consistent across that site where you're finding the data or across the publication where the data is? So those are just some questions that you can ask yourself. This is just an example of data that you can pull from the census, from the U.S. Census. So, of course, that data is good, reliable data, and it gets updated as frequently as the census can update data. And some of the things that you can see here, this is pretty small depending on how big your screen is, but it gives you the veteran population in Pennsylvania, and it contrasts it with the entire United States. It shows you the percent female, and Bridget kind of touched on this, but we're seeing more and more female veterans. I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. Also more and more veterans who are not white. So that's the thing to think about in terms of how you approach student veterans, for instance. You don't want to make the assumption that they're all male, because you're going to have female student veterans as well. Other data that you can pull from the census in this sort of format is about unemployment. So you can see here actually in Pennsylvania, and this probably is 2018 data, that the unemployment rate for veterans was actually a little bit lower than, for veterans in Pennsylvania was a little bit lower than across the US. There's a nice map here, and in that map where you see the dots, each dot represents veterans. So as they get darker, you're going to see those are in Pennsylvania, these are your, obviously, if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, your urban centers here are more heavily concentrated of population in general, so that includes your veteran population, but you can see some other pretty heavy pockets where there are lots of dots. That's where you're going to have a lot of veterans in Pennsylvania. So it also breaks down the period of service, Gulf II, Gulf I, Vietnam, and then down to Korea, World War I, World War II, and then peacetime only. So that's one example of some great data that you can get off the US Census. So in order to get that data, don't be afraid to play with it. So I just took a screenshot of a menu bar off Census website, but if you want to start by going to data.census.gov, and there, when you pull that up, there's going to be an advanced search feature, and there are all different ways you can filter your searches. So there will be a thing that says, an option that says filter. You can filter by veterans, and then by state and by county. And it's not super intuitive, I will say that. So as somebody who spends a fair amount of time playing with data and looking for data, census data is amazing because there's a wealth of information, but that's also what makes it a little bit more challenging to find. So don't be afraid to get in there and mess up and play around and get frustrated and go back out. One of the things, the ways we structured this workshop is to have these office hours. So at our next office hours, if you have questions or there was something you were really looking to find and you couldn't find it, we'll be there to help. So hopefully you'll come and join us, and we can help in your data search. So there are a few other really great resources, and in our guide that is on the website, and I think somebody is going to pop that guide into a link to the guide into the chat box. Somebody can do that. That'd be awesome if it hasn't already been done. But it gives you the addresses of some of these other sites that I'm going to talk about here. So what you're seeing now is a screenshot from what people call VSTART, which comes out of Syracuse University. And they basically take, VSTART stands for the Veteran Strategic Analysis and Research Tool. It is an excellent tool. I see there's a question about census data. Is it updated data or is it updated every 10 years? It's as up to date as they have it. So a lot of times the census actually pulls in from some other community surveys that are done more frequently than every 10 years. So when I was pulling this data, most of it was either 2016 or 2018 data. And of course, we're in a census year, but it takes a little bit of time for that to get compiled and updated. And VSTART does a good job with updating data and telling you what years you're getting the data from. So if somebody can pop in that link also for the Syracuse University project. This particular screenshot, so what VSTART uses census data, but it kind of puts it together for you nicely so that you don't have to kind of figure out your own charts and things. So this is in veteran unemployment by county, and this is from Pennsylvania. So some of the things that you'll see are, if you look on the right-hand side, those are going in order of more and less unemployment. So at the top, where the red bars are the counties with higher unemployment rates for veterans, going on down. So that's just one example of some cool data that you can pull off of that website. If you're interested, Ulster County, New York has the highest veteran unemployment rate of almost 25%. So, but the data that data is a little bit older, so it's not current. And of course, right now when we're talking about unemployment, everything's changed. So remember that if that's one of the data points that's going to help you. And so it's also really important, one of the reasons we wanted to talk about community assets before we talked about data was because hopefully you, as you're thinking about your goals for your project, and what assets you already bring to the table, and maybe what gaps your community has or your organization has, that helps you decide where you can go looking for data and what kind of data is going to help you the most. So what you're looking at here is also from Syracuse, and this is just a big statewide look at veterans in Maine. So and mostly what I wanted you to see here was all the detail is interesting, but what's more wanted to make sure you could see is that when you go to the veteran site at ivmf.syracuse.edu, you can see demographics, you can see labor, you can see education, and you can see other services. I'm going to take just a second here so I can show you, drop that in. Here we go. So that's where that, that nice dashboard comes from. They really, they do a nice job taking all that census data and putting it in a nice, compact, visual format, and that can kind of then start sending you down other avenues of information once you get a chance to see the big higher overview. So we've got a whole bunch of data resources, and this information is also on the website under our resources. But so I talked a little bit about US Census data. Of course, the VA has a fair amount of data as well. Another great resource for, particularly if you're looking for research on military families and also veterans, is the Military Family Research Institute, and that's out of Purdue University. And if you kind of poke around in the MFRI, they also have a kind of a community survey, which is more geared towards finding out in a self-report manner from various organizations about veterans in the community as well as military families in the community. And showed you some of the great graphs and infographics that you can get from VSTART out of Syracuse University. And the other thing I wanted to point out, and I noticed in our chat early on that we had somebody here who works with one of the collaboratives. But if you just Google your, New Jersey Veteran Collaboratives or pick a city, there's some really great work going on around supporting veterans and communities through local veteran collaboratives, and they are an excellent resource for information, for data, for networking, for looking at those assets. Chances are pretty good they've already done some kind of survey, be it formal or informal, of what is happening and how veterans are being supported in the community. So, and some of them are quite large and even work with universities on research. The one I'm most familiar with is the LA Veterans Collaborative, but I just did some searches and found some various collaboratives, particularly in the Northeast. There's a lot of resources. So I would really encourage you to touch base with your local veterans collaborative, and they can help you make sense of some of that data as well. All right, so we're winding up here. We've got time for any questions, comments. I see Mark is putting some great resources in the chat. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate that. So I'm going to mute myself, and if you want to speak, you can do that. You can unmute your mic or just type in the chat box. And you can have questions about any of what we've talked about today.
Hey, I will add to what Circe said about America Serves. Every state is tasked to have an America Serves office and a person at the state level. Some have chosen to embed them in their state level veterans organization, in the governor's working groups, however they do it. I want to say there's 12 states now who have taken it upon themselves. Organizations have to create their own collaborative within that or functioning under it, and they all have different services. North Carolina's USO took the lead originally. They're the top USO in the world, one of the oldest ones, still operating, and they started it as a separate entity under the auspices of America Serves. But every state has an office, and then some states do different services. But over the 5 years I've been using this one, I've been able to connect our military transitioning families that need extra services to America Serves or state level serves in Virginia and in Texas and in South Carolina to help smooth over bumps in the road. So I encourage everyone to look at your state level and say, hey, how can we expand this? And then I just put that NVI, that's the newsletter sign up. I just can't say enough about them. And another one's the America's Warrior Partnership. They're all about building ecosystems, which we talk about all these groups and data, but if we can't have some kind of an ecosystem that lets us understand who's doing what, where, when, and why, and how to use them, we just kind of have a group of stuff out there.
Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, that's kind of, Bridget touched on that and talking about our Sea of Goodwill. There's so much out there, so that sounds like a great resource.
Hi, this is Luisa from New Jersey. As Mark was saying, New Jersey has so many organizations working in supporting veterans. However, we need to, as a state level agency, we need to recognize and identify those organizations so we can better service the veterans. So when the veterans come to us, to the state of New Jersey, to the state agency, we'll be able to refer them to the right area.
That's a great comment and thought as well. So as we transition, when we get together next week, we'll start talking again about partnerships. And it's interesting because there may not, even if there's not a specific formal project or initiative for collaborating on, man, how important would it be to know all of the resources to be able to connect veterans or other organizations together with what's there. So good comment.
So we've got some homework. Oops.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to see if there are any other questions before we go on to talking about homework. everything look okay in the chat, Crystal?
Yep. Yeah, it's great. A great active chat, lots of good resources. So hopefully we save the chat file and we can pull out those resources and comment. So I think we've got it all well and good. These are not homework, these are learning opportunities.
Learning opportunities. So Sarah, do you want to start by talking about the data homework assignment?
Sure. Thank you, Bridget. So again, in the back on the web page where you registered, there's going to be a homework assignment for session 2, and it's just a brief. It's in the form of a Qualtrics survey, but we are just asking some brief questions and sort of sending you out to do some data digging of your own. And you can decide what data makes the most sense for you to be working on and trying to figure out. And then thinking about what that data tells you, and then most importantly, what action can be taken from what you've learned with that data.
And then there's another short video on building partnerships. And so the building partnerships model, it builds upon the assets. So the 7 community capitals or assets that we talked about, the asset mapping. So there's a worksheet that you'll find on the website as well. So it would be best if you have gone through the website and filled out ideas around the assets or resources available in your community based on those. There's a very short video around building partnerships. Again, it uses that same framing to help you think as a tool for helping you to think about where there might be partners or partnership opportunities or partnership needs. And when you've completed the video, there's a short Qualtrics, very short Qualtrics. It just has an opportunity for you to fill in some ideas and examples around partnership opportunities within the 7 categories of assets or capital. And then there will be one other very short video, and we do those so that we can hold more time and space when we're together to really talk about it rather than share the instructional piece about it. But a very short video around SMART goals. There's a recording. It does say respond in Qualtrics, but our team decided let's opt to take that piece out, so there won't be a Qualtrics that goes with the SMART goals. We'll instead have time together to talk about that, as well as to go a little more in depth with anyone who wants to go more in depth during the office hours on identifying SMART goals. So there is no Qualtrics, so we took some of your homework off the table for you. Any questions or clarity needed around any of these? We'll call them self-paced learning opportunities. How about that? Good.
Again, what is the website, please?
Just dropped it in chat. If you just scroll up there a little bit,
Oh, okay.
it's the one that has
Thank you.
veterans-participant at the end.
Okay, thank you.
So Bridget, I'm not seeing any other questions if you want to close this out. Oh, I do see
Well,
one.
thanks
Someone's...
so much, everyone. It was great to have you all here today. We do have office hours on Monday. And Crystal or Sarah, could you confirm the time? I believe is it 10 a.m. on Monday? And you should have the connection info for the office hours in the email that was sent out to you with all the connection information for the entire workshop. Again, those office hours are optional, but as you're going through these homework or self-paced learning opportunities, if you have questions or anything that's coming up or things you just kind of want to talk through, please join us. We'll be there for the whole hour, regardless of how many people are there. And if it's just the 3 of us, we'll just be chit-chatting and catching up. So join us for coffee, say hello, and yeah, if you have questions, we'll be there to talk with you all. So thanks so much for joining us today on our first workshop session. And I encourage you to get in touch with us at any time. If you could put our emails in the chat, Crystal and Sarah, so folks, you can reach out to us over email as well if you'd like between now and next week. And looking forward to just getting to know you and getting to know all the work you're doing in the next couple of weeks. So thanks for joining. Rachel, I'll turn it back to you if there's any other housekeeping items.
No, none other than I will mention, if you go to that website right now, you will only see the homework up for this session, but we'll have the other homework up shortly and it will be on that link. So just give us a tad bit of time. We'll get everything up and y'all will be all ready for the next session. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.